aid would be considered not only as an argument in favor of a pre-human origin of moral instincts, but also as a law of nature and a factor of evolution. Espinasse devoted his main attention to such animal societies (ants, bees) as are established upon a physiological division of labour, and though his work is full of admirable hints in all possible directions, it was written at a time when the evolution of human societies could not yet be treated with the knowledge we now possess. La Naissance lecture has more the character of a brilliantly laid out general plan of a work in which mutual support would be dealt with, beginning with rocks in the sea, and then passing in review the world of plants, of animals, and men. As to Buchner's work, suggestive though it is enriched in facts, I could not agree with its leading idea. The book begins with a hymn to love, and nearly all its illustrations are intended to prove the existence of love and sympathy among animals. However, to reduce animal sociability to love and sympathy means to reduce its generality and its importance, just as human ethics, based upon love and personal sympathy, only have contributed to narrow the comprehension of the moral feeling as a whole. It is not love to my neighbour whom I often do not know at all which induces me to seize a pail of water and to rush towards his house when I see it on fire. It is a far wider, even though more vague feeling or instinct of human solidarity and sociability which moves me. So it is also with animals. It is not love and not even sympathy (understood in its proper sense) which induces a herd of ruminants or of horses to form a ring in order to resist an attack of wolves; not love which induces wolves to form a pack for hunting; not love which induces kittens or lambs to play, or a dozen of species of young birds to spend their days together in the autumn; and it is neither love nor personal sympathy which induces many thousand fallow deer, scattered over a territory as large as France, to form into a score of separate herds, all marching towards a given spot in order to cross there a river. It is a feeling infinitely wider than love or personal sympathy, an instinct that has been slowly developed among animals and men in the course of an extremely long evolution, and which has taught animals and men alike the force they can borrow from the practice of mutual aid and support, and the joys they can find in social life. The importance of this distinction will be easily appreciated by the student of animal psychology, and the more so by the student of human ethics. Love, sympathy, and self-sacrifice certainly play an immense part in the progressive development of our moral feelings, but it is not love and not even sympathy upon which society is based in mankind. It is the conscience, be it only at the stage of an instinct of human solidarity. It is the unconscious recognition of a force that is borrowed by each man from the practice of mutual aid, of the close dependency of everyone's happiness upon the happiness of all, and of a sense of justice or equity which brings the individual to consider the rights of every other individual as equal to his own. Upon this broad and necessary foundation the still higher moral feelings are developed. But this subject lies outside the scope of the present work, and I shall only indicate here a lecture, Justice and Morality, which I delivered in reply to Huxley's Ethics, and in which the subject has been treated at some length. Consequently, I thought that a book written on mutual aid as a law of nature and a factor of evolution might fill an important gap. When Huxley issued in 1888 his Struggle for Life manifesto (Struggle for Existence and its Bearing upon Men), which to my appreciation was a very incorrect representation of the facts of nature as one sees them in the bush and in the forest, I communicated with the editor of the 19th Century, asking him whether he would give the hospitality of his review to an elaborate reply to the views of one of the most prominent Darwinists, and Mr. James Knowles received the proposal with fullest sympathy. I also spoke of it to W. Bates. "Yes, certainly, that is true Darwinism," was his reply. "It is horrible what they have made of Darwin. Write these articles, and when they are printed I will write to you a letter which you may publish." Unfortunately, it took me nearly 7 years to write these articles, and when the last was published, Bates was no longer living. After having discussed the importance of mutual aid in various classes of animals, I was evidently bound to discuss the importance of the same factor in the evolution of man. This was the more necessary as there are a number of evolutionists who may not refuse to admit the importance of mutual aid among animals, but who, like Herbert Spencer, will refuse to admit it for man. For primitive men, they maintain, war of each against all was the law of life. In half of this assertion, which has been too willingly repeated without sufficient criticism since the times of Hobbes, is supported by what we know about the early phases of human development, is discussed in the chapters given to the savages and the barbarians. The number and importance of mutual aid institutions which were developed by the creative genius of the savage and half-savage masses during the earliest clan period of mankind, and still more during the next village community period, and the immense influence which these early institutions have exercised upon the subsequent development of mankind down to the present times, induced me to extend my researches to the later historical periods as well, especially to study that most interesting period, the three medieval city republics, of which the universality and influence upon our modern civilization have not yet been duly appreciated. And finally, I have tried to indicate in brief the immense importance which the mutual support instincts inherited by mankind from its extremely long evolution play even now in our modern society, which is supposed to rest upon the principle every one for himself and the state for all, but which it never has succeeded nor will succeed in realizing. It may be objected to this book that both animals and men are represented in it under too favourable an aspect, that their sociable qualities are insisted upon, while their antisocial and self-asserting instincts are hardly touched upon. This was, however, unavoidable. We have heard so much lately of the harsh, pitiless struggle for life, which was said to be carried on by every animal against all other animals, every savage against all other savages, and every civilized man against all his co-citizens, and these assertions have so much become an article of faith that it was necessary, first of all, to oppose to them a wide series of facts showing animal and human life under a quite different aspect. It was necessary to indicate the overwhelming importance which sociable habits play in nature and in the progressive evolution of both the animal species and human beings, to prove that they secure to animals a better protection from their enemies, very often facilities for getting food and (winter provisions, migrations, etc.), longevity, therefore a greater facility for the development of intellectual faculties, and that they have given to men, in addition to the same advantages, the possibility of working out those institutions which have enabled mankind to survive in its hard struggle against nature and to progress notwithstanding all the vicissitudes of its history. It is a book on the law of mutual aid, viewed as one of the chief factors of evolution, not on all factors of evolution and their respective values. And this first book had to be written before the latter could become possible. I should certainly be the last to underrate the part which the self-assertion of the individual has played in the evolution of mankind. However, this subject requires, I believe, a much deeper treatment than the one it has hitherto received. In the history of mankind, individual self-assertion has often been, and continually is, something quite different from, and far larger and deeper than, the petty, unintelligent narrow-mindedness which was, with a large class of writers, goes for individualism and self-assertion. Nor have history-making individuals been limited to those whom historians have represented as heroes. My intention, consequently, is, if circumstances permit it, to discuss separately the part taken by the self-assertion of the individual in the progressive evolution of mankind. I can only make in this place the following general remark. When the mutual aid institutions, the tribe, the village community, the guilds, the medieval city began, in the course of history, to lose their primitive character, to be invaded by parasitic growths, and thus to become hindrances to progress, the revolt of individuals against these institutions took two different aspects. Part of those who rose up strove to purify the old institutions, or to work out a higher form of common